disturbance in grasslands, because we think when you disturb grasslands, and we're talking about soil disturbance, so the distinction is burning, that's disturbance, but it's vegetation, it's quite good. To the soil, we get different outcomes. So the wind farm's gone in pretty recently, and as a consequence, this pole and power lines has been also inserted into the landscape to carry this energy away. And so what you can actually see here is sort of nice principles around trying to minimise soil disturbance. So the footprint of this tower, when we can actually sort of see it probably only goes out that far, I assume, not having been here, they just dug a big hole and dropped them in, or just concreted it and dropped them in, or whatever they did, whatever you do. And so what we have is a relatively small footprint around the base of this. Now, that's how it could have been done was, of course, you know, lots of vehicles, bulldozing, doing all that kind of stuff and ending up with a very big weed problem. But what it has done is introduced a couple of species we haven't seen yet. That's native. Okay. This is bent grass. Looking at bent grass. Bent grass will be one of the most insidious grassland weeds, because once it's into the system, it's really hard to get out. One of the reasons being you can start to see they have runners. And so a bit like kikuyu or couch grass, those kind of grasses, once they get into the system, really difficult to get out. You'd much rather have a tussock grass that you can just spray and kill it and it dies. So that's bent grass. Not very palatable as well when it browns off, and so sheep and stock don't eat it either, so you can't really... Once it gets into paddocks, people start spraying it out of paddocks. You know, it's not a good species. So it's turned up at the base here, and I don't know much bent grass in these grasslands. So bent grass has come from somewhere, possibly out in the paddocks there.
There would be bent grass in paddocks.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. It's not in grasslands, so that's just interesting. Some other key guys you might know, I mean, that's fog grass, Yorkshire fog, also known as Yorkshire fog. It's coming up. Yorkshire fog doesn't do very well in grasslands again, unless they're disturbed. Probably because it's not very competitive. We've got one of the bromes, and they're looking enormous as well. So that's one of the brome grasses. Again, not a big player in grassland weed kind of space. And I suspect, again, because of the absence of disturbance to the soil, these need disturbance to get in. And then this is our rat's tail fescue. So at the very first site on that Glenelg Highway, these were about this big in the grassland, and here they are. You know, they're enormous, and they're probably producing about 50 times more seeds. Probably as a response to the soil disturbance that then releases nutrients. So whenever you disturb the soils, you tend to release nutrients that are stored in the soil that are locked up in vegetation, principally. But you could actually say this is a good news story, that we've minimised the disturbance. The advice would be to minimise the disturbance so that you reduce the impact on the grassland. And as you can see, these are new structures that have been put into a grassland road reserve, so there would have been requirements to do that. But it kind of gets to that point of trying to minimise the disturbances, the negative impacts on these systems to keep them in relatively good condition. One of the things that is around, not just where we're looking right now, it's right in front of Aggie actually. Anyone know what that particular plant is? Wild oats. What do we know about oats? Wild oats?
Annual.
It's an annual. Oh, the seeds are falling out right now. So it's a really big problem. We see it all along the edges of the roads where the water runs off the roads and the nutrients, and so you get big long strips on the edges of roads.
And behind the sign in the Warndoo Common.
I didn't say that.
There's massive on it.
Wherever there's, and also where there's added resources, so water.
Yeah.
So water
so
runoff.
Water probably drips off the back of the sign.
Well, what's going to happen? Water's going to drip off these power poles. It's small, but I wouldn't be surprised we start to see some things over the years under the power lines. So this varies in size and density according to the climate. So some years it's really dense, looks terrible. Other years it's really small. It's quite insidious in grasslands, but it's promoted by resources. So whenever table drains get dug out and the spoil gets pushed over, that's when you get a whole row of this stuff all on the edge of the road. And it then gives the perception that these grasslands are high fuel load, weedy, low value. And so it's hard not to do it when you're sitting in a tall bus like this, to wander down and see the edge and go, oh, it's really weedy. And that's because of the resources and the disturbance on the side of the road. What do you do about it? In northern Victoria, in the riverine plains grasslands, there's been some trials of using weed burners to just knock this out. If you think about it, it's an annual plant, lots of them germinate, all these seeds they're producing, there must be at least 50 seeds, or would have been, next season's generation. So if you can burn these, and a weed burner is simply like a glorified flamethrower, yes, exactly. It's not quite as flamethrower-like, it's a little. And you don't need to consume them, you just have to singe them. And that's enough to kill them. And then you reduce the seed load, and you can actually push them down very quickly. Rocky. I hope he slows down.
No.
Who's that car at the back there? Right.
The thing that I'd suggest that they've done pretty well here, and I work for GWM Water, so I'm a developer. We do pipelines, not power lines. But what we see, if you just come in and dig a hole to make the foundations for a pole, you end up mixing the topsoil and the subsurface soil, and you get these sterile patches on the surface. So without that here, I'd suggest they've at least made an effort to minimise disturbance by stockpiling the topsoil, then excavating and putting the topsoil back. And that'd be pretty good practice these days.
So this is so this is good practice. I mean, good practice in the sense of minimisation of that. Yeah. Bringing in other species, not so great. No, I mean the bent grass is coming from somewhere.
Vehicle hygiene is probably the toughest thing to do in a big project. Yeah.
Now I don't know, but I assume, and someone else might be able to. Were these flown in, these towers?
No.
So they were trucked in, and that's possible. Oh,
That's
from the
what
side of the
I'm
road, they would have
wondering.
been craned in,
This area does see.
Right. But again, trying to minimise that impact. And I guess what that means though is long term, then you're reducing those negative outcomes, not just for plants and animals, but just weed risk, fire risk, all that kind of stuff. So it's good practice again, actually, because there's so many examples where you disturb the soil, and that's the end of it. It starts going backwards with polaris.